Okay, so I think we can start. So welcome to all. I hope you're having an excellent day today. We're really excited to be here with all of you. We want to share some of the projects we're working on and how we're trying to face some of the challenges that we have today. So please keep your mics in mute. You can post comments to the chat or questions. We will divide the presentation in two parts. So we will have an initial presentation and then we'll open up for questions and conversations regarding participation and other opportunities. So give me a second, we'll set up the presentation. Okay, so my name is Luis Camargo. I'm an Ashoka Fellow, founder and director of OPEPA Colombia, and lead convener for Colombia Regenerativa. With me in this session, Edward Mueller, who is the founder of the University of International Cooperation in Costa Rica and the leader of Costa Rica, Regenerate Costa Rica initiative. We are all part of the community, of the Regenerative Communities Network, which for the last couple of years has been weaving individuals and organizations into a co-created community of collaboration for bioregional regenerative initiatives. Within this community, we have 5 Latin American countries that are working local projects to overcome the food crisis associated with COVID-19 pandemic. So for the last couple of decades, we have seen an increase in deterioration of the, can you, in a second, we're having an issue with the slides. Okay, for the last couple of decades, we have seen an increase in deterioration of the planet's life-sustaining systems that, if continued, will lead to the collapse of the stable planet we have come to know as our planet. Planetary boundaries that you see on the screen that were created by Rockstrom and Steffen help us to understand and monitor some of these planetary critical systems. As we can see, currently, we have already surpassed the limits or the boundaries of a couple of the key systems, which represent in the worst one is, or the one where we have surpassed the most, is biodiversity integrity. So we've really debilitated the capacity for sustaining diversity, especially the genetic diversity. We have also impacted the nutrient cycles, phosphorus and nitrogen, basically, which are related directly with soil fertility. If we look, the next one would be land use and land systems are being used and modified very quickly. Forests are being deforested and land systems are being changed in their use. And this is affecting the integrity of ecosystems and different bioregions. And lastly, we have climate change. So curiously enough, climate change is the subject we most speak about sometimes, but it's not necessarily the one that it's most critical at the moment. But if we look at any of these independently, they can really generate a collapse or the initial of a collapse in the planetary capacity to sustain life. But if we put them forward together, we are really at the door of an impending collapse of planetary systems. This is very concerning, and it's so important that we have named this geological era based on this, on the impact of humans in the planet. And this is what we have called the Anthropocene. So unfortunately, in the last 35 years, we've been speaking about sustainability, and we've known about planetary limits, but we really have not acted much. We have created the sustainable development goals, but we're just starting to act upon them. And it's actually really important to act quickly in this. When we look at the current pandemic and the COVID situation, the pandemic has come really quickly and has overwhelmed all corners of the world, rich or poor, developed or underdeveloped. This virus has exacerbated and broken down the weak system based on global market and increasing industrialized, intensive production of consumer goods. Many Latin Americans work on a day-to-day income stream through informal work and trades. As they are confined, they are restricted of earning their day's pay, and this limits their solvency and their capacity to purchase even the most basic goods. Many people are becoming hungry and are being thrown out into the streets for not being able to pay their daily rent. Food production, supply chains, and distribution systems are greatly impacted in this quarantine world. Production is limited or non-existent in many regions that had transitioned to other industries, such as tourism or exports. Costa Rica is a great example. Over 85% of the economy was based on tourism, and it halted from one day to the other, suspended. So 85% of the economy is without production, and there's no food production in these lands. Also, a product that has been collected or produced is not being able to get harvested adequately because people are not being able to move and collectors are not being able to harvest all the product. So a lot of product is being lost to this process. Additionally, difficulties to transport and distribute have reduced the capacity to move that product when it is harvested into the city or distribution centers. And this limits the access for food and also increases the cost of food. So the combination of these factors are creating a time bomb for hunger and social unrest in our region. The COVID emergency is making evident the vulnerability of our system and presenting us with a great challenge. And all challenges generate windows of opportunity to evolve, in this case, speed up the transition to regenerative approaches that can provide food, safeguard health, and generate well-being for people. We have found communities working locally and coordinating globally to restore and regenerate natural and socio-economic systems, allowing a fresh vision of development to emerge by regional regeneration. With this project, we will activate multi-level partnerships, strengthening bioregional efforts that already exist in the region and within the regenerative communities network. We will be able to co-share knowledge, best practices for agriculture and community resilience. Regenerative agriculture will not only be the anchor for this process, but it will also quickly provide food and cohesion for vulnerable communities. Live energy to move beyond COVID-19 crisis into a prosperous and healthy future, full of alternatives for people, communities, and the planet. In order to understand this, I'm gonna pass the word to Melina and for her to show us how the system has been mapped and how we're gonna navigate through this big challenge. Melina?
Thank you, Luis. I'm gonna show you now a little mapping that will show how food production will be connected in this whole system that we are living now. And I will start with the bioregional food security that is connecting us with the possibility to have access to healthy food, to include people in food production, and the food distribution low carbon. So it is local and bioregional. This will assess these two big points of the crisis right now that actually will complete the whole thing. And everything is connected with regenerative agriculture, who has mainly these points that are help to ecological stability, local agriculture knowledge recovery, diversity, and we need an agriculture planet for balanced nutritious food, not just horticulture and legumes. And we go to do it through soil regeneration because regenerative agriculture is actually
No tanto,
restoring
en el
fertility.
nudo.
Can you help me
En el nudo.
to silence?
Nudo un poquito más acá porque puede servir como tanca.
And this regenerative agriculture is connected with, well, the plants itself, food preservation, and all these have their own main points to develop. Planting, biodiversity, permaculture design, conscious cooking, and all the spiritual connection with food. And this regenerative agriculture is connected with how living systems are regenerating themselves and connect themselves. And big part of this point is to create transformative experiences. And what we are acting now is through regenerative tourism, especially in Costa Rica and Pitalito, two big regions in Colombia and in Costa Rica, who are really touched by the confination of the pandemic. So what we are really addressing this, and we are connecting, is a regenerative economy. And this bioregional food security will create much more expressions or connections on how to, like be able to connect people in food production, healthy food, and access to food, actually increasing the incomes and the access to food. So the actions we are doing now, which might be going to reinforce the actual initiatives and creating the meta networks and exchange of experiences process, are connecting. And I will open the whole map now just to show you how all these dots are connecting in the actual network that we are in now. So doing workshops, we are doing in 3 bioregions. We are trying to do a food distribution that has increased in 400%. Biomapping, bioregional mapping, increased network of production, ecosystemic regeneration, and this process of transition from tourism economy to food production. So these actions are connected with the 5 countries of the community, regenerative communities network in Latin America. And actually we are working on how to increase our actions and looking for more allies and partners and funders. So I will let Edward to help us to understand more this connection. So Edward, you can share again your screen.
Thank you, Melina. So let me just skip the. So the main activity areas are basically connecting doers and communities in Colombia, Costa Rica, Mexico, Peru, and Brazil. So we want to have people who are actually already doing projects that are regenerative and that can share their experiences, and communities that are needing to learn and needing to be able to discuss with other people when they arise with problems and are facing challenges. So we have to set up a learning network that shares tools, resources, best practices. Basically, we're talking about a regional food security and resiliency collaborative. So being able to, at a regional level, increase community resilience, especially facing COVID and also post-COVID, engage business coalitions to support the transition to regenerative production. I think, as Luis mentioned with the planetary boundaries, one of the biggest actions that we have to do to save the planet is actually convert all our agriculture to regenerative agriculture and stop using chemicals, which are actually also linked to the destruction of biodiversity. We need to test and consolidate then a vision for land stewardship at the bioregional level and empower local communities to be able to govern their territories adequately, focus on a local development with a lot of interlinkages between the different social components to break away from the inequality processes that many of our countries have been facing over the last years. And lastly, but not less important, we need to really try to establish regenerative finance and funding to support local initiatives. Many of these communities don't have now the necessary resources to actually fund on their own the transition. So basically, we need to break away from the traditional framework of competition, where the individual is the one that succeeds and has to smash his competition, to collaboration as a measure of success. We also need to move away from the clustering thinking to a big network of co-creation where individuals, organizations of all nature, of all backgrounds, of all academic levels can co-create solutions at a local level by exchanging experiences at a bioregional level and throughout the Regenerative Communities Network to other countries. We want to bring together local wisdom, local knowledge together with science and generate new alternatives. This is very important in Latin America. We need to recover agrobiodiversity. We need to recover culinary experiences. We need to recover practices that could bring more resilience to global changes and climate change in the future. So this is a highly important component of it. And so basically we are now looking for partners in communication, in storytelling, in funding, experts and expertise that can help move this forward. Local regenerative initiatives that are already running that we haven't identified, and that could also provide training opportunities for neighbors and for other communities and through the network to other countries. So these local regenerative initiatives are highly important. And of course, education institutions and many other partners that will allow us to strengthen this project specifically, but then also through the Regenerative Communities Network, we want to extend this throughout the planet. So it's basically a large learning community, global learning community that will allow us not only to attend the COVID pandemic, but also the previous challenges that are still there and are still growing, such as biodiversity loss, fertilizer use, land use change, climate change, and basically a political breakdown and a breakdown of the current system that we have been building that has shown that it is totally not resilient, very vulnerable to any change. And I think nature has been wise in offering us this virus as an experiment for society to what is coming, which is a lot bigger challenge with global collapse. So we are really requiring a change in our development paradigm to avoid bouncing back to the model we had previous to the coronavirus. We must bounce beyond that model. And we have to look towards well-being. We have to look to well-being economy, regenerative economies. We have to look to regenerating the capacity of the planet to keep on providing the ecosystem services that humanity requires, and which are now basically way under the capacity that the planet has to keep our consumption rates. So this is actually right now focused on food security, food safety, and regenerative agriculture. But on the long term, it's actually a transition of the planet to a new relationship between humans and nature, where we become one, and where we don't have two different concepts, one of use and one of conservation, but understand use and conservation as one concept, as the indigenous communities in Costa Rica believe. They criticize us for using two words for something that they consider one whole thing. So I'll stop sharing there, and we can actually, I think, open it to the discussion.
Thanks, Edward and Melina. So the idea is to generate a bit of conversation, so the people, you know, that want to or have ideas on how to partner or how to generate alliances to strengthen our capacity to co-create solutions and to really share within initially the American tropics and subtropical regions. You know, you're welcome to put your questions and we can select and generate the conversation. Use the chat for the questions or for your or raise your hand for asking to speak, please.
Lucia, please.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I'm from Colombia, but I'm currently in Mexico. And I have a question regarding your activity areas, but the activity areas that Edward mentioned. I work with a small business that I'm building in Colombia that focuses on creating regenerative processes for multiple stakeholders in order to achieve the potential of their initiatives and to contribute to life and well-being. And we have always wondered for how to create these partnerships and these alliances that we all know that are necessary. It's a solution that we see everywhere in lots of scientific journals, in different publications. The answer is always multi-stakeholder articulation, whether it is academia with the public sector, or whether it's civil society with governments, or with enterprises, or with whoever. This is constantly like a recipe that we see. And yet it's a conclusion that many people come to, but we hardly see initiatives that actually achieve this in practice, and not only achieve the collaboration or the coming together of these stakeholders, but also creating sustainable results from these meetings, from these encounters, or from these networks. We have multi-sector gatherings that sit down in round tables and talk about what they can do together, but I at least rarely see how this progresses over time. And in my experience, it actually erodes with time. And so I would like to know if you have any example, or if you would like to share with us methods or ways that you have seen that these collaborations can thrive, especially considering the bioregional approach and considering the fact that it's a complex network of people who have different interests. So yeah, I don't know if you could share a little bit more about how to build these coalitions and these partnerships and these networks that can really have an incidence in our territories.
Thanks, Lucia. If Edward, if I can start, you know, there's two things. One is one of our allies is the Weaving Lab, which actually has been working in 4 years in precisely what you're asking, and how to understand the process to generate deep collaborations and weave together multi-level stakeholders into alignment so we can work towards, you know, common goals. So we're applying this weaving methodology into our systems, and I placed on the chat the Weaving Labs webpage to check it out. And there's a couple of presentations still in Catalyst associated to the Weaving Lab, so you can check them out also. But also, the Regenerative Communities Network has precisely been an instrument to do this, and we actually have co-created systems to collaborate together and to bring in actors from other areas and start connecting them into propositive actions that show quick success. And as we see quick success, it replicates really easily. So these two are really important parts of our system. Edward?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I've been in many networks before. I think it's a different moment in time right now. People are open more to collaboration. We are actually requiring collaboration. And also, as Luis mentioned, giving good examples. So if we want to bounce beyond after COVID-19 to a better world, we need to show the way. So we need to give examples, true examples of what's happening. And we have amazing examples of food forest, permaculture initiatives, community initiatives that are not actually visible usually under the current or the previous model. Everybody was working kind of on their own, and we have beautiful success stories. So basically what we're doing is connecting all of these different initiatives, making them visible, and that sparks immediate attraction for participation, because people are learning and are co-creating their own solutions based on the experience of other people. So this is actually the possibility, and we have now the networking, and a lot of people have actually lost their fear to non-face-to-face meetings, which they used to say, no, it's impossible. We don't have the same impact. Well, now we're forced to it, and actually we can achieve a lot using the technology that we have available. So I think it's a moment of change. I think we have to use that opportunity. It's a small window, but if we actually can showcase how you can produce your own food, live healthy, and be in abundance and not scarcity, be favoring local empowerment and local community, living in peace with your own community, and not wanting to always aspire to something that is out of reach for most of the people that have been pushed through media that they have to have all those things to be happy. I think people are realizing now that to be happy, you need basic things, and you can be happy and in abundance if we do this correctly. Anybody else?
I would like to add something to that question, sorry. Because I think that it is very important to acknowledge that we are in a different place, as Edward said, but we also need to recognize from the inner space from which we are connecting with others, and to start this collective consciousness about networking and doing a work, and trying to bring out all the ghost roles that we have about money, about abundance, about connecting with others, about having recognition in these kind of relationships. So bringing awareness into the relationships will help us to really bound in connections that are reciprocity based, not just transactional or other spaces. So I think that the personal and spaces has to open now in order to really create other kind of relationships, and that bounds much better the networks and the people in the networks, and that's our experience as well in the Regenerative Community Network. So yeah, other questions?
I have a question. There are. Sorry, hi, this is Jaru. I have a question, if I may. Several of the sessions in, catalyzing change have been on education. I'm sorry, on agriculture, food sustainability, regenerative So my question is, should we have all the speakers of these sessions together the next time to create a coalition? Because you all have talked about it. So I don't know, I'm just asking whether you all think this is a good idea, a bad idea, because there's something happening in Asia, in Latin America, everywhere. So that is my question. That's it.
Thank you. We have two hands that are up. So let's start with Federico.
Sure. There you go. Hi all. Hi Luis, Edward, Melina. Good to hear you. I'll be very quick. I shared in the chat an alliance called OP2B, which you may have heard about. This is a big business alliance. So to your point about creating business coalitions, I think about 20 companies worth many millions, mainstream companies, some of them B companies, under the leadership of a man by the name Emmanuel Faber, who is the CEO of Danone, and a bit of a leader for sustainability in that kind of big corporate world. I would strongly encourage to look at that. They were launched about, I think, in the New York COP in September. And they were expected to come out with metrics and plans in 6 months, but I think COVID must have stopped them. I'd love to work with you on that. We already know each other from other channels, so more than happy to help that. But I sense a strong alignment with your proposal here. The other thing that I wanted to bring up to your assessment is that sort of in terms of making a case for this, I can't get to you with the precise kind of scientific quotation, but apparently it takes anywhere between 6,000 to 10,000 calories to put 1,000 calories on your plate. And all those calories are fossil. So oftentimes I see regenerative agriculture being focused from the perspective of carbon sequestration, which is one big plus, but also focus at avoided carbon, because probably that's an even bigger and more immediate business return to any company that has made some kind of pledge to decarbonizing just by supporting this kind of agriculture without having to wait for the gradual over time benefits of carbon sequestration. You're already from day one not putting essentially fertilizer, which is 80% of those 6,000 calories, into the soil. So you're getting benefits on day one. And those two combined, I think, make a really compelling case for getting businesses to engage, and then getting to your point about generating some funds, some climate funds. I think that's an underexploited avenue in the whole carbon world, which I get your point that this is bigger than carbon, but probably carbon is a very good lever to get things going.
Thank you.
Thank you, Federico. Carbon is definitely one of the large impacts associated with agriculture and land use change, and that is related with agriculture. So definitely that has to be explored. Ale Arango had raised that hand.
Gabriela also. Mm-hmm.
Hello, everybody. I just want to go to the first question and tell you some of my opinion about like trying to put together a lot of people, even when you're talking about institutional or I used to work with a municipality, and I also have the possibility to work with the regeneration of a project of a bio corridor of a river inside San Jose, which is Costa Rica's capital. And there were like all these really big institutions like the Ambiente Minister, Environmental Ministry, like National Electricity Minister, and some other institutions inside that work with regional ecological resources. And just to tell you about like all these big layers, I believe that there should be a person, I don't know the size of, or a group of persons or an entity, in this case was GIS from Germany, who decide to take the decision that he will find a way to put everybody together. So while this was happening, all the small other companies or all the small other pieces of the big chunk were doing prototypes. They still were doing their own. So what I believe is that sometimes you should not wait till the big, like everybody is together to take the decisions. You should, someone should take that role, and also you should be prototyping everyone from its size, or maybe two of them already joined and find a way to work, and you should start prototyping. There's something that I believe that was from old time, that is like we should have this plan that took 3 years to develop, and at the end is already like rotten, the plan. So we should prototype small scalable projects that we can like reproduce, escalate, and replicate. So that will be my experience of working with very big entities that have to do all these legal things that take even 2 years, but at the end you can do it. Right now, like Edward was saying, and some other people say, people are open, but it would take time because legally we have make really complex situations to like feel secure legally. I believe is one of the biggest things. To share things. So that's my experience, and it can be done. You have to have patience, and someone have to be really into it. But beside that, people should start doing, not wait till the thing is done. That's so prototype, scalable, and replicable small projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Ale. One thing that I would say is that we really need to bring this conversation towards people that are doing that kind of decisions, because we don't have that much time. So and the collective networking capability will really like not make a pressure exactly, but like a show that it has to be addressed quickly. So if we are able to really tie this networking and connection, and show how the information flows in this food security system, interconnected networking, we maybe can just like doing it and show the ways, and they have to be more open to listen, especially during this crisis we are now. They cannot deny that.
I think we have Gabriela, then Catherine, and then Manolo. Gabriela, go ahead. We don't hear you. You're not on mute, but your microphone might be off. No, let's go to Catherine, and you try to fix that and you come back. Catherine, you want to say something?
Hi, I just wanted to share. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Luis, Eduardo, and Melina, for this incredible opportunity to connect. I just want to say that in the Peruvian Andes, we're working in the Valle Sagrado de los Incas, from Cusco to Machu Picchu, and we're really looking at how, with the Cordillera, with the mountain ranges on either side of the valley, we're really looking at climate change. We're looking at, drastic things that are happening right now. A lot of the water is coming from glacial melt. And then we have the soil erosion, wildfires, and everything. And so we're developing a glacier to river framework that we want to connect with people on this call and around the world, where we can share ideas. And I just wanted to put that forth and put that out there so that people understand the region that we're working in and the different ecosystem. And just to say that one of the things from the presentation that I think really highlights where we are is that we have a lot of in the valley, we have a lot of transition to do to organic farming, but within that whole watershed extending down to the Amazon basin and the higher Amazon jungle, we have a tremendous amount of food production, agroecology that's already happening. But where we have a really hard time is with distribution. And distribution is especially difficult under the COVID-19 situation. So I'd love to hear people talk about ideas or things or ways that we could even share distribution systems and distribution networks from our countries and from our regions. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Very good point. Gabriela, are you back, or do we go with Manolo? No, I can't hear you. No. Manolo.
Hola, hello everyone. Sorry I'm late. Very, very nice to see you after a long time of not being really present with the group, but I've been super busy the last 6 months. Plus I had an accident in my motorcycle that also put me in a kind of a difficult situation during January, February, and March, but I'm almost back to normal. I was late, Eduardo, so can you just tell me what am I supposed to share now?
Okay, we basically are trying to, or we're working on a project of basically a regenerative agriculture as a solution to COVID. And it's a 5-country initiative: Brazil, Peru, Colombia, Costa Rica, and Mexico. And this is a pitch to try to get new partners to support it and try to get funding or funders to support it. We need to move fast. It's a learning network that we want to have set up where we can bring in all of these beautiful examples of what's really going on the ground. And people have been advancing in this for many years, but everybody has been disconnected. And now we need to basically transform agriculture to regenerative, breaking down the big corporate systems that have been introduced in many of our countries that are causing all this planetary damage. So it's basically rolling out a collaborative network to co-create solutions for regenerative agriculture and food security for people that are now with a lot of difficulties. Costa Rica has lost about 40% of its labor, unemployed now, and without access to money or to food. So we need to solve these issues very quickly in order to avoid the whole break apart of society.
Thank you very much for the background, Edward. And again, very nice to see you and hear you. Also, Melina, Catherine, very nice to see you. Welcome me to begin with. As you know, I'm a partner at an organization where we are really active in terms of incubating and helping with both financial and non-financial resources, the incubation of social entrepreneurial projects, obviously with social, economic, environmental impact. And we're very close to some organizations like Ejido Verde, for example, or Grupo Paisano in Mexico. And obviously we're firm believers of a positive agricultura de conservación, so we are in for that, no? So more than happy to learn of the project, Edward, and evaluate how my partners and I and the group of funders that are supporting our organizations and the funds, the investment funds that we're launching can help here. So count me in.
Gracias, Manolo.
¿Puedo ensayar por este lado?
Sí.
Okay, so I've had trouble. I'm talking through another computer. I'm actually not Gabriela, that's my daughter's name. I'm Carolina Bermudez. I've been working on school academies and right now with an organization. And I have a big concern about how bringing actually academy into this discussion and basically schools more than universities. Because I think this discussion about food production and food security is mainly among adults. And I believe the importance for kids to be part of this, and not only because they don't have the space, but it's because they don't have the knowledge. And I think even though this is not going to be something urgent, as Edward is saying, an immediate result, but bringing schools to teach kids on how to produce their own food is going to be like the base problem solving for this. But this can only come as part of someone talking with Minister of Education, because it has to be like a subject as a core subject. As students know the importance, and and English is a mandatory subject. Food production and agriculture should be like a mandatory subject, because they have to grow with the habit of knowing how to produce their own food. And bringing this as adults is such a big fight, and it's not as easy as learning this as you're a kid. But again, it would be much easier if it comes from the minister and it's a core subject, not just like an elective in schools.
Yeah, one of the things we've learned over the last few decades of working in this is it's very difficult to fight the system, and what you have to do is create an alternative system. And right now in Costa Rica, we're working with several schools, and actually there is one school. It's a rural public school, not a private school, that teaches everything through agriculture. So kids enter at 4 years and a little bit to preschool, and they're the ones that go harvest. And so they have to count the number of eggs they harvest. They have to weigh them, and then they have an average. They make the average of how many eggs per day and per week. So they learn math through the harvesting process. They learn geometry. They learn a lot of other things through the farm. And there are many of these examples that don't fit in within the ministry regulations, but then are tolerated and then can move forward. So getting a top-down decision, I think, is not what we have time for. But there are actually, one of the things we want to do is showcase these schools that are actually already doing things like this. And many schools now have organic and regenerative farms in the school garden, the kids working on it. So this is part of the learning network that we have to set up. I would love to see a network of schools, public, private, rural, urban, working on a subject like this in cooperation, where kids actually are talking with other children in other countries and exchanging experiences and learning from other children, not from experts. And this is what we have to try to set up. So this whole proposition we're doing is these learning networks, and they're not only for university people, they're for practitioners, they're for farmers. That's why I said doers and communities. So people who are actually doing things can tell the story. It's a lot better for a farmer to learn from other farmers than to learn from a technician or an expert. And the higher the degree, the more difficult it is for him to show in normal circumstances. We have exceptions. So yes, part of the work we're going to be doing is exactly that, networking successful stories that can show other people how to do it without having to wait for a permit. In Spanish, I would say, let's do it. I'm translating. Let's do it, and then we ask for forgiveness. But let's do it first. Hagamos y después pedimos perdón.
Thanks, Edward. We're almost running out of our slot of time.
We had just a last raised hand. Maybe David.
Dave.
Hi, thank you. Mucho gusto a todos. I'll be very brief. I just say I've had the chance for about 8 or 10 years to work with Ashoka and Skoll and a lot of social entrepreneurs who built regenerative enterprises in lots of different countries. And my mission now is to help spread these models around the world. And we're doing very little work in Latin America. although in my past I've done a lot. I would love to find a way to connect. Let me just say 3 things briefly and then sign off. But one is, Don Edward and others already have maybe 6 or 8 schools that have integrated regenerative ag and nutrition deeply into how the children lead their own curriculum development in other countries. I'd love to connect if useful. And then 2 other things. One is just ideas, and let me know if we should follow up in any way on how we've been able to successfully spark some new community action that spreads pretty quickly. One is by convening small groups of stories that tell an enterprise theme, enterprises that somehow are sustaining themselves through regenerative action, and really dissecting and then playing back these stories in communities seems to get people very excited. People on the ground, community members. So I could share some examples of how we've done that and what's been working, and maybe what didn't work. The other idea to put out there is that one thing we've learned is that perhaps, well, the most tangible, practical lever that we found for reaching new people who haven't wrapped their head around the whole regenerative storyline is to focus specifically on nutrients and the nutrient connection between soil and people. It feels very practical to people. And when you go there, you can see in your own ecosystem where the nutrients are working or falling apart. And that leads people right into actions they can take. It really seems to be spreading. So I just offer, that's the result of like several years of thinking on these things. I hope it's useful, and I would love to connect if it can be useful in any way.
Thank you, David. Definitely, I think very useful. I actually sent you a private message with my email. So please write me and I'll write back and we'll network you in the whole thing. The more collaboration we have, the more examples we have to follow, the less we have to reinvent the wheel.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, David. I think one of the comments that was said, I think gathers it all. You know, food is the essence of life, at least for human life. And we need to really strengthen the capacity to collaborate in creating food coalitions and prioritizing food production in a regenerative manner in order to shift into a regenerative economy and a system that's really prioritizing planetary health and human health at the same time. So we thank you all for participating. We've placed some links for you to share your contacts if you want to be connected, and we'll be following up with you all and hope to see you connecting with this initiative, partnering up, and being part of the co-creators of this revolution. Thank you very much, Melina, Edward.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, our time is up. I would have loved to keep on. We're actually going to be organizing more of these meetings at a regional level in parallel to meetings at the national level. And we're going to be doing it in Spanish also for those who don't speak good English. So please fill out that form, and then we have your address and we can invite you to the future meetings. This is going to go on. It's taken off already actually a few months ago. So we are already in the process, and we're not going to wait until we get funding or until we're going to start just moving forward. So yes, we can organize more of these meetings and bring in more experiences. And actually that's what we are supposed to be doing in the Regenerative Communities Network anyway. So it's part of our day-to-day life now.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. You're amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Pura vida.
Thank you for having joined us.
Yeah.
That's great, guys. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Manolo, tenemos que hablar.
Sí, me encantaría, Edward. Sorry que llegué tarde a lo de banca ética, pero creo que sí puedo agregar valor también a esa conversación.
Perfecto. Hoy estoy con Ramel
Thank you.
en la mañana.
Sí, vi que ya tuviste tu plática. Yo lo conozco y tuve varias sesiones con él en México. Si quieres, platicamos por separado de mis conversaciones y de mi opinión sobre el tema.
Perfecto. Un abrazo.
Bye. Espero que me digas cuándo podemos conectar para ese tema. Bye bye. Y gracias por esto. Suena increíble. Bye bye.
Vamos a cerrar. Chao, muchas gracias. Buen día.
Bye.
Gracias.